I didn't walk into improv class thinking silence was going to be a problem for me. Like I'm not someone who's uncomfortable being quiet. I can sit with my thoughts. I'm fine not talking and enjoying that silence. So when I started improv, I assumed silence wouldn't really affect me, but almost immediately I noticed something I was not expecting. The moment a scene kind of slowed down, or there was a pause, or no one jumped in right away, I felt this weird like internal pressure. Not a conflict, but just not a like no panic, no fear, just a pressure, just like this urge, like, okay, I should probably do something by now. And what surprised me was that no one else seemed rushed while doing that scene, or in the room there wasn't this tenseness. My scene partner wasn't panicking. It was literally just me, or that's how I felt. And that's when I realized that silence wasn't uncomfortable because it was awkward. It was uncomfortable because I didn't know who I was supposed to be inside of it. Now let me break that down because that was philosophical right there on the board. So I've been taking improv classes at the Second City in Chicago. I just finished up the first week, the first term, which is about 8 weeks. And before anyone hears that and thinks this is going to be about comedy or jokes with improv, it's really not. A lot of improv is slow. It's quiet. It's a lot of listening. There are entire scenes where nothing big happens. There's no punchlines or a clear direction like most improv shows. It's just people responding to each other in real time. And what I noticed early on is that those moments made me restless. Like I needed to help the scene somehow. Like silence meant something was missing a part of it. And at first, I told myself that was engagement. That just meant I cared. That I wanted things to work out. But the more I sat with it, the more I realized that that urge wasn't about the scene; it was about me. And if you've ever been in a conversation where there's a pause and your brain immediately starts scrambling for something to say, even if nothing actually needs to be said, that's the feeling I'm talking about. And if this kind of reflection feels familiar or useful or even just comforting to hear that, I'm going through it as well, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because it really does help out a lot and it lets me know that you guys find this content relatable or enjoyable. And that's honestly what this space is for. Now, the thing I keep coming back to, and this took me a while to put into words or put into thought into words, is that silence doesn't actually remove connection. It removes structure. You see, when no one is talking, there's no role to play. There's no clear job. And that's where I started to feel uncomfortable. Because without something to do, I didn't know how to contribute to it. I didn't know what I was contributing. But improv quietly keeps putting me in that space. And I had to explore that. And I had to see, what my reaction was to the silence. And one of the first patterns I noticed was how physical my reaction to silence is. It's not even a thought sometimes. It's like my body reacts before my mind does. And that happens to a lot of us. Someone stops speaking and a beat passes, and internally it's like, okay, yeah, say something, move it, move forward, fix it, do something. At first, I thought that meant I was engaged because I wanted to do something. And then I started paying attention to that feeling. I wasn't responding to the moment, I was reacting to my own discomfort. That's what I realized. Silence felt like a problem I needed to solve. Well, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. This is why silence feels like failure to me. This is why silence feels like failure. There were scenes where nothing went wrong. No one forgot anything because we didn't have anything No lines. No one broke character, whatever scene or sketch we were doing. But because the scene didn't escalate or land, I felt like we were doing something wrong. And that confused me. Because when I stepped back and I realized nothing was broken, nothing was broken. It just wasn't resolved. And I think I'm way more uncomfortable with unresolved moments than I realized. I like most people, I like clarity. I like closure. I like knowing where things are going. But that silence doesn't give you that. This part took some time, honestly, and I don't rush to fill silence because I love momentum and want to rush into it. I rush because I just want to feel useful. I want to feel funny, insightful. I want to be relevant. And when I'm quiet, I don't know what I'm offering. And that made me realize how much of my identity is tied to doing something. Silence doesn't reward effort. It doesn't care how prepared you are. It just sits there. And that was uncomfortable in a way I didn't expect. And here's why I learned to stay just 1 second longer in the moment. Over time, I started experimenting, and I didn't do anything dramatic. I just staying quiet 1 second longer than I wanted to. That's all I did. Letting a pause exist without immediately reacting to it. And something interesting happened. The moment I was in a scene or sketch or with a scene partner, it didn't collapse on me. The scene didn't die in that moment when there was a beat. Sometimes it actually got deeper. I noticed facial expressions. I noticed an energy shift and subtext. What I mean by that is that things I would have completely missed if I rushed in, but silence wasn't empty. I just hadn't been patient enough to stay with it. I don't want to get too sidetracked here. Here's the difference between the freezing and the pausing. Because there's a difference I'm learning between freezing and pausing. Freezing feels panicky, which I did. It feels like you're stuck. Pausing feels aware, like you're choosing not to move yet. They look the same from the outside, but internally they're completely different. And that's what I had to really reflect and stay self-aware stay self-aware on. And improv helped me feel that difference instead of intellectualizing it. And this is how it shows up in my real life. Because once I noticed this in improv, I couldn't stop seeing it everywhere else in my life, in conversations where I answered too fast. Not speaking too fast, but just answering too fast. In moments where I interrupted someone's thought, in situations where silence made me assume something was wrong. I realized how rarely I let moments finish. Not because I'm impatient, but because I'm just uncomfortable not knowing what comes next. So silence forces you to trust that moment. There was a class where I let a silence stretch kind of too long. It wasn't for a joke. I didn't want anyone to rescue me from doing that attempt, and nothing bad happened. It's just that moment stuck with me because, well, if you've ever noticed yourself filling space just to avoid discomfort, I'm curious. Do you notice it in your conversations or when you're alone? And if you feel like sharing, drop it in the comments. I actually read them and I actually want to know. But getting back to this, the longer I sit with this, and the more I realize, silence isn't about absence. It's about not being in control. Well, silence doesn't. I realize that silence doesn't let you manage how you're perceived. It doesn't let you steer the moment. And that's probably why it's uncomfortable. Because it asks you to be present without doing anything to earn it. Oh, that was good. Especially how improv keeps reminding me that I don't need to add something to every moment. Sometimes the moment just needs space. And that's what I learned. And that applies anywhere beyond acting and life. So, in case no one has told you yet today, I love you. You matter. You have value. And let me say something I haven't said before. How I used to think silence was something to move past. And now I'm starting to think it's something to listen to. Not every pause needs a response. And not every moment needs to be filled. Some of the most honest things happen when you stop rushing to say something. And I love how improv has been quietly teaching me that. So appreciate you, Second City. If this way of thinking resonates with you and you want to keep exploring these ideas together, please subscribe to the channel. It lets me know that you guys enjoy the content. This has been Actor's Notes. And Actor's Notes, by the way, is just me noticing things out loud. Okay? It's not like I'm giving you advice. It's just a reflection, place of curiosity. Yeah. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I love you.